For over 25 years, Roland Trujillo has been helping people shed the shackles of unhappy memories, consisting of upset, hurt feelings, and negative emotions that bind them to the past. Over the years, many people have listened to and benefited from Roland's positive message. Perhaps you too can discover the secret to becoming free from the past and moving forward to live a new life of joy and purpose. And now, here's your Shedding Shackles host, Roland Trujillo.
There's a beautiful saying of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. He says to his disciples, if they ask you, what is the sign of your Father within you? Answer them and say, motion and rest. Motion and rest. If they ask you, what is the sign of your Father within you? Answer them and say, motion and rest. That's very profound. You see, what comes from God is motion. There's a very beautiful version of the New Testament. It's called the Khabouris Manuscript, translated into English from the Aramaic. It was in Aramaic. And the very beginning of the Gospel of John says, in the beginning was a willed action. You see, God began everything. He's the prime mover. He's the uncaused cause. He willed an action. And from that came forth everything that you see. Well, if you are in God, and God in you, if you're in the Father and the Father in you, then you become a vehicle of the Father's will. And when your only will is to do His will, like Christ, His only will was to do the Father's will. When your only will is to do the Father's will, then His will moves through you. And then your motion, your movement is purposeful. And then you rest. Remember, God created. In the Bible it says He created everything. And then on the seventh day He rested. Well, when you have moved in a purposeful way, in a proper way, in a spontaneous way, from within, in other words, everything you do is intuitively impelled. You move in your own time and space. And what you do then is motion that originates from God through you because you wish to do His will. And it's a different kind of energy. It's a different kind of energy. And then when you are done, then you rest. Motion and rest. But contrast that with the way most people live. They react. Everything they do is a reaction. Something happens on the outside and they react. Somebody says something and they react. Something happens and they react. Someone makes a suggestion and they react. See? And then their life is one of being stimulated, excited, and moved and motivated and prodded and challenged and teased by the outside. I know you can see that all around you. You can see everyone. You see it everywhere. You see the advertisers, you see the schools, you see the coaches. It's always more study, more classes, more this, more that. Even in church, more study, more verses, more money, more work, more. So we become like stimulus response animals. Now, for animals, it's perfectly natural. It's perfectly natural. But for we humans, there's something else involved in that. First of all, it's not natural. We're supposed to be inwardly impelled. We're supposed to move graciously and gracefully from being impelled from within. But instead, we become like animals. But the temptation, but that which stimulates us, is not just the usual rain and snow and other animals and so on, and heat, like it is for animals. For us, it's temptation. Or people who are doing the will of their Father, not the Heavenly Father. And so they tease and they pressure and they insinuate and they motivate and they challenge. And you react and you react and you react. Got it? Christ said to his disciples, if they ask you, what is the sign of your Father within you? Answer them and say, motion and rest. Can you see motion and rest? Like taking a breath of air and then rest. Like a heartbeat and then rest. See the beauty of it? The day unrolls and then comes twilight and then the evening for rest. Can you see the beauty of it, the simplicity of it? That's how we must live our lives. Motion and rest, doing the will of the Father. But the reason why, you probably wonder why you're so drained and so stressed and so fatigued and so nervous and so upset and so tense. At a very profound level, your whole life has been one of reacting to people on the outside and what they said and what they did and what they insinuated. And then you began to react to everything that happened. Everything that happened, you reacted to it. Even if you bumped into a chair, you became angry. If this happened, you became resentful if that happened. And if it wasn't that, then you were getting excited, nervous, worried, fearful, upset. Reaction. Every one of your emotions is a reaction. Someday you'll realize that. If you begin to meditate properly, where you learn how to become still, to sit quietly, and let the light of God shine through your soul. And if you can learn to get out of your thoughts, see, your thoughts are the result of those reactions. The squirrel cage of your thinking is the result of that. If it's not worry about the future, then it's reliving the past. And what was the past? It was a reaction. So you must see that you have to have a whole different way of living, and it takes a whole different energy. But now you are a total stimulus response animal. And the stimulus is temptation or people. See, who were acted through and now they act. So they may not be bad. They don't want to be temptation, but they are. Your father was a temptation, his weakness, his not being there for you. Your mom, with her nagging or her worry or whatever, it was a temptation. The other kids that were cruel and mean and teach you, they were a temptation. Everything has been a temptation. So now you must learn to stand back and observe without reacting. You have to find a whole new way of living and moving and have your being that comes from within instead of from without. That's the beauty of it. That's the sweetness of it. A life of motion and rest. You see, God is our Heavenly Father. And He knows, it says in the Bible, He knows what we need before we even ask of Him. But you have never known your Heavenly Father. Instead, all you've known is your failing earthly father, who wasn't there for you, undoubtedly, when you were a child. And your mom, your poor unloved mom, who resented him because he didn't have the kind of love that she needed. And so you've only known failing men, failing people, angry people, and you've never known the Heavenly Father. And so, only having known earthly people, the trauma that you underwent through hating, that's mostly how it gets in, but also it comes in through false love, see? The trauma penetrates and changes you, and then after that, their ministrations feel like love. I'm sure you've heard of the Stockholm Syndrome. There was a famous case many, many years ago of Patty Hearst, I think her name was. She was heir to the great Hearst newspaper fortune, I think. But anyway, she was captured. She was tortured and held prisoner, and then she identified with them. She identified with her capturers. And so you can see how that happens to people. They identify with, take comfort from those that change them. And then it feels like love. Being around those types then feels like love, you see? But remember what I said early on? I said the old military expression, never take comfort from the enemy. Now do you understand? So all the smiling faces all around you, they want to keep you as you are. They want to keep you in the fallen condition that you are, because if you were to refine your ground of being, and if you were to begin to shine brightly and speak honestly and from the heart and spontaneously and truthfully, see, that if you had a joy, if you had something special, then the children of darkness, the children who have been changed into the image of the world, many of them wouldn't like it. Some of them would. It would give them hope. They would see the good in you. Not you, but the good in you. But some of them wouldn't like it at all. They would want to change you back to the way you were, because they would feel more comfort with you. They wouldn't feel uncomfortable around you. Your brightness, your honesty, your truthfulness makes people uncomfortable. And so they would rather have you conforming again and wrong, conforming and wrong, so that you and they together could take your drugs and party and support each other and do whatever you do, and you wouldn't make them feel uncomfortable. But the love of God calls you the other way. It calls you to look, to seek for your true identity, to seek for your true identity. St. Augustine put it this way in his Confessions. He said, "You made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless till they find rest in you." Francis de Sales wrote a famous book called An Introduction to the Devout Life, or the Life of Devotion. A life of devotion. And so we must be devoted to something, don't we? But what are we devoted to? Well, mostly we're devoted to the only life that we know, the emotional life, the animal life. See, when you fall away from your Creator, then you fall into the flesh, into the imagination, and you, devoid of, separated from your true identity, then look for your identity in the world. And so you look to other people, and especially, you look to sports stars and entertainers, and you look to popular people, and, you want to find an identity. Somehow you see people seeming to be happy and get all kinds of approval from others and be respected and admired and looked up to and sought after, and then you think, well, that's the way I want to be, so you start jumping through the hoops to get a degree and to do this and to do that and to dress in a certain way and listen to certain music and to act in a certain way to impress others, always to impress others so that you can look good in their eyes and be admired in their eyes and get their approval, not their disapproval, and get their love. You crave love. You crave love for the identity within you. See? And so this identity craves love from the world. And when it gets love, well, it becomes more of what it is. And you become less of what you could have been. See what I mean? And so at some point in your life, for a lot of people, it's when they're around 40. That seems to be a watershed year or time of life. And you start to look at yourself, and you start to look at your habits, your food practices, and your friends and your things, all your stuff, and your work and all of that. And you see how it has shaped you and molded you, and then it keeps you trapped, doesn't it? And you yearn to be free. And so you think, well, if I had a house in the country or up in the mountains, or if I rode a bicycle, or if I got a motorcycle, or if I divorced my wife and got a younger wife, or divorced my husband, got another husband, or if I got divorced and then wasn't married, then I would be free. Or if I had another job, or if I had more money. See, not to mention the issues that you develop, health issues and financial issues. And you think, well, I could just pay off my bills and get rid of this ailment that I have. And see, but the answer to what has gone wrong with you lies in refinding your true identity and then receiving the love of God. See, and it requires searching for it. Christ said, seek and you will find. All you can do is seek it and yearn for it. Yearn for what is good and yearn for what is true. The cry of the soul is silent. Your soul silently cries out to your Creator. And He answers. Okay? And then He answers with, first of all, some light. He gives you a little bit of light, and He gives you the power. He gives you the power. See, now, let's put it this way. After all these years of conforming and being angry and striving and all of these years of taking in the world, you can't let it go because you need it for comfort. Just like a fish needs water, the deer needs the forest. You need all of your friends and your wrong food and your marijuana and your entertainment and your music, and you need all of that. But if you could leave it aside, if you could not indulge it, if you could stand back from it, well, you can't do it now. But with God's help, you could. He gives you the power to stand back. And if you cry out to your Creator, and He gives you some light, so you can begin to look at things objectively, and He gives you the power to stand back and observe. That doesn't mean that you would become a saint right away. It doesn't mean you could give everything up right away. But if you were serious about coming back to your Creator, then He would give you the power to say no to the most recent things that you've taken up. That would give you the power to stand back from some practices that are very health damaging. And He would give you the power to stand back and be less angry, less resentful toward people. And then you could begin to spiritually recover. You would begin to be in the world, but not of the world. And with time, maybe lots and lots of time, you would learn to eat moderately and of the right things. You would learn to be patient with other people instead of resenting and judging them. And you would learn to look at life almost like a tourist and marvel at all the things that you see and not resent other people. And with that kind of an attitude, and with God's help, you would begin to draw closer and closer to your Creator. And for not hating people, you would get His approval. For not resenting other people, you would get His approval. And for not being impatient with other people, you would get His approval. And you would feel His love in your being. So now I tie it all together. You must find your Heavenly Father, and then you will be able to live a new kind of life, a sweet life of motion and rest, purposeful motion and rest, a spontaneous life of doing good, instead of a life of emotional reaction to everything on the outside, which is all you've ever known. Yes, people have failed you. You must forgive them, they never found it either. Augustine said, "You made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless till they find rest in you." Why are we restless now? Because we're a stimulus response animal reacting to the outside, reacting. And so we react to everything and we become nervous and tense. We have all kinds of symptoms from our reactions and overreactions. So you must find a new way of living and moving and having your being and flow from within. May I recommend that you get the little meditation that I talk about so much. It could be a nice beginning for you to find this life, this beautiful life of motion and rest. Until next time, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.